Record. Perfect. Well, welcome onto the show, Shani. I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are very spiritually gifted to be into this work, helping others, from what I know, go through their spiritual awakening, tap into their gifts, get their soul desires, tap into their feminine energy. And you do something that I have never heard before, and it's powerful. So that's why I wanted to bring you onto the show. And you are what is called a rebirthing breathwork facilitator, and you help people change their birth script.
Mm.
So, can you describe to the listeners, okay, what the hell is changing your birth script, and how does it help you get what you want out of life?
Yeah, thank you so much. Beautiful question. I work very deeply with ancestral healing, with breaking cycles. I'm here for the cycle breakers, for the ones that know they're the rebels, the renegades, the ones that get to say no. Like the story ends here with me, and I'm not here to continue carrying out the stories and the patterns and the beliefs that were passed down through my bloodline, because I want to change that paradigm for myself. And I do that not just for me, I do that for my lineage, for my ancestors, and I do that for my legacy. So whether that be future children, children you currently have, whether it's Sally down at the vegetable shop, whether it's so and so on the bus, whether it's the person who delivers your mail or your post, these are all part of your legacy. Because when we look at creating new paradigms, rewriting stories, when we get to somatically experience where those stories live in the body and then get to move through that and alchemize it into a new story, that's when you get to create this huge ripple effect out into the world. And it isn't just for your immediate family and your partners and your children. It really is for the random person on the street that needs your support, or for your teacher, or whoever, your work colleague. This is the kind of work that can be taken into all places in the world. And so working deeply with ancestral healing is a big part of rebirthing breathwork for me. There's lots and lots of different breathwork modalities out there, and since I trained in breathwork facilitation like 4 or 5 years ago, like breathwork has boomed onto the scene in multiple different ways, and there's lots of different breathwork for different scenarios, for anxiety, for calming down, for bringing more fire. But what I hear a lot in the sphere is that a lot of people are trying these breathwork practices at home, particularly Wim Hof, especially women that are trying Wim Hof practices at home by themselves and then actually dysregulating their nervous system as a
Mm.
result, and struggling to actually, like, it fuels them up so much they don't know how to release it properly from their body. And this is why for me, like, doing guided breath work is so important when you're doing that level of intensity. And rebirthing looks specifically, it's a form of conscious connected breathing that I personally guide people through just through the nose. So it's nose breathing without the mouth, um, which actually is better for us for many reasons. Um, we are meant to be breathing in and out of our noses. It's a filter. It cleans bacteria. It cleans, the dirt from the air, but it also brings in a lot more life force energy. And there's a connection between the cilia in your nose and your genital area. So if you're not breathing properly, you're literally cutting off life force energy. Right? You're literally cutting off your sacral, your desires,
Mm.
when you don't breathe, you're dead, literally, physically. Like when you stop breathing, you're physically no longer, your heart stops beating. But also metaphorically, like when we're contracting, or not even metaphorically, physically, when we're contracting our breath, when we're holding our breath, when we're in fear, when we're in pain and guilt and shame paradigms, and we're contracting that breath, we're stopping the flow of the life force energy that brings us back to, like, our clarity and our purpose and our life path and the truth of who we are and our wholeness. And so rebirthing looks at your origin story, it looks at your birth script, and that is how you were conceived into this world, the moment of your conception, which, when you think about the word conception, to conceive something is to bring an idea into manifest, to bring an
Mm.
idea into form. And so, even that initial imprint of your conception, the idea of you before you became manifest, before you were formed, that idea can come from many different places, you know. For example, if I'm struggling to pay my rent and I have to come up with that money by the end of the month to pay the rent, like I have to think of a creative solution, a creative idea to come up with that money. And maybe that idea is coming from desperation, maybe it comes from fear, maybe it comes from empowerment, like I'm going to find the way, you know, that like all of these ideas come from different places. And it's the same when the idea of your conception is formed. If a baby is conceived through a loving, conscious,
Mm.
beautiful, divine union where both partners want that baby to come into existence, and there's a consciousness and an awareness around that conception, that baby's going to have a very different imprint to a baby who was, let's say, manipulated into being because the mother tried to trap the father into the relationship. So she got pregnant to keep him there. That baby has a very different imprint to the baby born of love and devotion and care and consciousness. On the other total extreme, you could have a baby that is conceived through, you know, unwanted assault or violation of the woman's body. And in that way, again, like that baby's going to have a very, very different imprint. And this is just the origin. Within that, you're carrying the stories and the cellular memories of your ancestors. And this is why it's so deeply linked to ancestral healing. The birth script then talks about, or explores rather, the time you were in the womb. So, what was happening in your environment whilst you were in the womb? What was happening for your parents financially? Were they together? Was there presence? Was there fears? Was there birth stories that your mother was passed down? Was there a child loss before you? Were you next in the womb after a child loss? Like, were you a boy and they wanted a girl? Was, you know, there's so many different scenarios that can happen within the birth script. And then there's the actual birth. So how you came, how you transformed and shifted from being a water animal in the womb to a land animal on this earth. And that process is traumatic in itself. And for the majority of births, most people have some kind of interference with the birth. Like it's so much rarer to have sovereign birthing, even though there's like a big boom of that as well. And we're here for it. Like I'm here for the sovereign birthing. Like it doesn't happen for most people. Unfortunately, most people end up being birthed in a hospital, in environments that aren't very conducive to birth. There's medical intervention, there's random people in the room, there's bright lights and loud noises and materials and all sorts of things that interfere with the natural birthing process that imprint trauma into the body. And so rebirthing really looks at that origin story, your birth script, and how it might be playing out in the patterns of behavior in your life, and how it might be linked to ancestral wounds and patterns that have been passed down
Mm.
epigenetically, like biologically, but also spiritually. If there's spirits in your, you know, in your ancestral lineage that haven't passed on, what, you know, they're stuck and they're like using you for certain patterns. We explore this, and then in the breathwork journeys themselves, you get to somatically experience that in your body. So you get to feel in your body where there is stuck emotion, where there is stagnancy, where you might be holding on to old pain, injuries, stories, beliefs, memories that might be yours from this lifetime, but might also be from your origin story and also might be from past ancestors. And through the
Mm.
breathwork journey, you're physically experiencing that sensationally in the body to then be able to move through and break those patterns. So then you get to alchemize it through integration between sessions. And, you know, with my clients, I set them what I like to call soul play in between sessions. So whatever comes up for them in the journey, I set them some kind of soul play to do between sessions. So they've got time to then go and integrate and implement that in their life, because you can do as many ceremonies as you want, but until you learn to integrate that and see the
Mhm.
shifts in your life, you're still going to stay stuck in those patterns.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell for me what the magic of rebirthing can bring to somebody's healing journey, to their liberation journey, to their sovereignty.
Mhm. That's beautiful, and that's absolutely linked to ancestral healing, and I had so many questions pop into my mind. I was, like, writing them down as you were talking. So, you talked about how patterns live somatically in the body, and I can see how this can happen as um, as a baby or ancestral with like the DNA and things? How does someone know where in their body are they keeping patterns and what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, for example, and I can give you examples of my own personal birth script and birth scripts of clients I've worked with as well, obviously anonymously. I won't mention their names, but um, you can have, for example, for me, I have a recurring physical symptom or sensation that comes up for me when I'm about to break into a new paradigm. Like I can feel myself like up leveling into a version of myself that's like letting go of an old part of myself, and I can feel it physically in my body. And the way it presents itself to me in my body personally is I get very painful sinuses, like a blocked nose, very painful sinuses, and it goes up into my head, gives me a headache, and goes into the back of my neck. And I noticed it like every time that I'm about to step into this, something really good's about to happen, or I'm about to like crack a code or break a pattern and like say no to a story and move into this like more empowered version of myself. Every time that happens, I get this sensation. And so when I'm noticing that now in my body, I'm noticing the pattern of when it occurs, and then I can use the breath work to help me move through it. It's like a ceremony to
Mm,
help me move through it. And then when I start to breathe, I can feel that sensation going into my body. Or it could be that every time you spend time with a certain family member, or every time you spend time with a certain friend, you come away just feeling really depleted in your energy, or
mhm,
you feel like, oh, I'm like, oh, I've got a really bad stomach ache every time I spend time with them. Like, listen to the sensations in your body, listen to what they're trying to tell you, because your body is always trying to get your attention. That's where the wisdom lies. And connecting to ancestral, it could be that you are experiencing something in your body that is not even yours. Like it could be a story or a pattern that's like, like a tightness in the throat, let's say, of this inability to express your needs and your desires. And maybe that has played out in your life, but the likelihood is that the women in your line also experienced that, and it's
mm,
been so, as I said, so cut off from the life force energy between your sacral and your throat and your womb, that every time you then go to speak a desire, or you go to ask your boss for a raise at work, or you go to communicate something to your partner that feels edgy and you're not sure how they're going to react, or a friend or whoever it is, you feel that sensation rising in your throat. And
mm,
one of the exercises I love to do in my women's circles that the women find really, really helpful is when I split them up into pairs and they're sharing a story with each other. I do it so like one person is not allowed to speak. They're just holding the space, like the masculine. They're just listening to the other woman. As the other woman is sharing the story based on a particular theme that I'm working on that week with them, as the other woman is sharing the story, I say to them, stop and notice in your body when you're sharing that part of the story, where are you feeling that in your body? Because so often we replay the story. We're great storytellers. We love to tell stories, and we love to be the victim of our own stories too. It's really comforting for us. So as you're sharing the story, notice, oh, like I have a tickle coming up in my throat. I have a headache that's starting to appear. Like the back of my shoulders are really starting to feel heavy. You just pay attention to your body truth when you're sharing stories, or when you're around certain people or in certain situations. And that can give you a huge indication if you start to follow the patterns of yeah, what's going on for you in your body.
mm. So we hold on to these patterns, like we hold on to these, how would you call them? Like sensations in our bodies from maybe when we were babies or even down the line, right? Our ancestors that are holding us back from maybe like keeping us in patterns that make us like self-sabotage or making us, like you were saying, like hold us back from really being in our power. And you spoke a lot about, you were speaking on life force energy. And that's something that interests me a lot too. Like what would you say life force energy is?
Mm. Yeah, I think you can very much tell the difference when you feel that your life force energy is drained. So if you're feeling like your life force energy is your driving force, right? It's what brings you life, and your breath is essentially life. Because when you take your first breath, that's when you really become alive as a land animal on this earth. Before that, you were in the water, but you were relying on your mother through the umbilical cord to breathe, to survive. And now you're on your own, and your breath is your survival mechanism. It's your life mechanism. When you stop breathing, you take your last breath, that's when you leave your body as you know it. So your breath is literally your driving force for life. If you're not breathing properly, you're shallow breathing, you're holding your breath, you're contracting your breath, you're cutting off the energy that flows around your body, that makes you feel alive, that connects you to the cosmos, that connects you to earth, that connects you to people, that connects you to your desires, that connects you to what lights you up. And I think if you're in a position where you're having a really, you feel really low, and you're like, well, I just feel really lethargic and tired and feel depleted and just can't get creative, feel really blank, I feel just like I want to slob out all day. That in that way, you know that your life force energy is probably feeling pretty low. So what can you do? There's so many things you can do to recharge your life force energy, right? Like life force energy comes from your breath, it comes from the food that you eat, it comes from the water you drink, it comes from the
Mm,
people you surround yourself by, it comes from the things that you're doing for yourself to nourish yourself. So are you filling up your own cup, or are you just draining it all out, giving it to everybody else? Like, what can you do for yourself that really brings you a lot of joy and brings you back into a place of energy? It's like
mhm.
your phone dies, you have to recharge it. Your car runs out of fuel, you have to recharge it. It can't keep going on empty. So your life force is really your center of connection to yourself, to your essence, your soul, who you are, who you came here to be, what you came here to be, not what you came here to do, but who you came here to be and what you came here to be,
Mm.
and how that moves through you. And I think it's very obvious. Maybe there's a different words or terminology to use. Like depleted. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm fatigued. I can't be bothered. I haven't got the energy. Like there's other phrases that you can use, but it all pertains to the same thing.
I feel like that's something that, like, the majority of people are really needing to tap into is their life force and feel
Yeah,
into that, like, who they are, like, like you said, it's
yeah.
not what you do, it's who you're meant to be, like, who they're meant to be, and having that, you walk around and there's so many people who just look, like, dead in the eyes, like, the
Mm.
life force has just been, like, stripped out of them.
But it has. Well, it has. Like that's
Mhm.
there are forces out there who don't want us in our power, because when we have full life force energy, we're for it's a force, life force energy. There's a
Mm.
power behind it. And when we're in our life force energy, when we're in our power, when we're in our ecstasy, when we're in our eros, when we're in our energy, when we're in our liberation and our sovereignty, which are two pieces that I talk about a lot, particularly with the breath work and ancestral healing. It's about like reclaiming your sovereignty and liberating yourself from the paradigms that keep you trapped in a lower energy state. Because when you're in a lower energy state, you're more easily manipulated, because you're in fear and you can't be bothered and you don't have the energy. It's like you're going to battle against these forces, and if you don't have the energy, how can you show up and go to battle, right? Like they don't want
Mm.
they don't want us to feel that life force energy. It's been cut out of the gospel. It was feminine was cut out of the gospel, like the Magdalene, like so many ways that the patriarchy has just over and over again, and continues to over and over again keep people in a state of, as you said, like dead behind the eyes, in fear, in a lower
Yeah.
energy level, eating crap food, drinking tap water, like not getting enough exercise, not seeing the sun, telling you to put all
Mm.
these all this, whatever cosmetics on your skin, chemicals, and just everywhere. It's everywhere. And
Mhm.
what you're consuming on social media and television and all the rest of it. There's so many things I could share, like so many things around that. And it's a choice then to say, it's a choice point to say, well, I choose to reclaim my sovereignty and I choose to say no. And they may continue to do what they're doing, and they will continue to do what they're doing. And it's a story as old as time, and they'll continue to put out those stories. And like I said, people love a good story. People love to buy into their own stories. People love to buy into the stories that are spread around the world. Any good story, you're going to remember it, right? And it's a brave act of revolution and rebellion to say, actually that story smells like BS to me, and I discern that I choose my own story around this. Like, I choose to come into my own power, my own sovereignty. And that really does involve like having the life force energy to stay
Mm.
in a place where you feel alive, where you feel fulfilled, where you feel, good in your body. And it's not going to be every day. Like, we're just human, but you do have a choice point to choose life over death. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, like, even with rebirthing breathwork, one of the first things that I do with my clients is look at what's known as their eternal law, or their eternal lie, their personal lie versus their eternal truth. And the personal lie or the personal law is like these beliefs that you come into this world with. And a lot of the time, those beliefs are really
Mm.
leaning towards death, like in a way that's like self-sabotaging, like, I'm not worthy, and I'm a burden, and I don't belong to be, I don't deserve to be here. And there are so many underlying beliefs that are playing out, survivor's guilt, so much guilt and shame. And that is like leaning towards a death urge rather than a life urge. But when you can come
Mm-hmm.
back into the understanding that you are divine inherently, you were worthy upon arrival, and you do deserve to be here, and your gifts deserve to be shared, your voice deserves to be heard, and your life force energy is needed on this planet, because it's
Mm-hmm.
literally an energy that like propels things forward and creates things and creates new life all the time. Look at nature. It's always multiplying. Nature is like constantly having sex. Constantly. It is.
So
Like,
when you talk about
they understand life force energy. It's Shakti, it's feminine, it's what it is.
mm, yes, and that's what I was about to bring up. So you talked about the life force energy, and this is something that I really want to talk about in this episode too, just because I feel like it's something that so many people need. And
Mm.
it, like you said, it is hard for people to, if they have these gifts, like say someone similar to you, they have these gifts, yet they're bombarded with the social medias and the fears of, oh, it won't work out, and all of the fears of everything and the doubts and the worries. If they don't have that life force, if they don't have that movement to move them forward into that, of course they're going to stay back and hide in the shadows and not speak up and stay in that, you know, job that drains their life force continuously. And you had mentioned uh something with the feminine. Like how does being in your feminine help you get into this life force, help you activate your life force?
Well, I really think that, like, just as I mentioned with nature, like, I'll share a little story. I had this very beautiful journey yesterday, and my partner and I went to this mountain called Montaña Don Lauro. And Don Lauro is a Mayan medicine man, and apparently they've had ceremonies up on the mountain, and we took ourselves on our own ceremony up, as someone gifted us some beautiful medicine. So we
Mm.
took our own ceremony, did our own ceremony on the mountain. And there was a point, like, in the mountain, where on one side of the path there was this giant ceremonial drum, like really giant ceremonial drum, with a fire pit and a little shrine to Mother Mary. And on the other side was a body of water, also with an altar like an altar to Mother Mary. Now, I grew up Jewish, so I didn't really connect to the Marys growing up, but
Mm.
about 5 years ago, when I had my huge spiritual awakening, I was living in Israel at the time. I started to open up like my portals in connection to the Magdalene lineage, Mary Magdalene. My grandmother was born in Tiberias, which is literally next to Magdala, in Israel. She comes from an Egyptian lineage. So I already
Mm.
was starting to like feel that as I was like awakening my feminine on the lands where this all took place, right? Ancient times.
Wow.
And ever since, I've just had this incredibly beautiful relationship with Mary Magdalene, like incredibly beautiful all the way through my life. And like when I met my partner like 3 years ago, within 5 minutes, he actually looked at me and said, like, I see you, you're a Magdalene. Like he said it to me without me even mentioning it. It was very like in the space. It's always been in the space, but never really connected to Mother Mary on my journey. And yesterday, as we were in this mountain, he was off drumming on this big ceremonial drum, and he was singing Icaros. He works with shamanically, so he was like banging on the drum and singing these Icaros. And I was like, I just like got the message, like, lay your head on the earth and just be with the mother, like be with the mother, as in Mother Earth, the feminine, but also be with Mother Mary. Okay. So I'm like on the earth, like feeling the mud on my face. And I hear Mary give me some really, really beautiful wisdom that I feel was blew my mind and blew my womb open.
Mm.
And it's kind of like a secret that she revealed to me in that space. And like I said, I've never connected with Mother Mary, only with Mary Magdalene. So first she said to me, you can access different aspects of Mary within you. You've got the Magdalene, like you already are connected to her. She's there, like she's your home girl. Like you two are like super connected. She's here always. She's your eros, she's your life force, she's your creativity, she's your sensuality, she's your sisterhood. Like she's the depth of like the priestesshood, the magic, the like the blue lotus, like all the things. And then she said to me, but I'm here too. And when you need to call on me, you can have a different aspect of the Mary. And this Mary is the mother. And I was like, okay. Now we know Mother Mary, like Santa Maria, like she's Saint Mary, like and especially in Mexico, it's like everywhere. The mother, the Virgin Mary, the Mother Mary, Santa Maria is everywhere. But what she actually said to me after that, and it was so crazy because my partner was over on the other side of the path, like he couldn't see me, and he was drumming on this big drum, and he started to sing an Icaro to Maria. Like I could hear him like
Mm.
really loudly singing to Mother Mary. And obviously there was like a little shrine next to him, but I don't think he didn't know the journey that I was going on the other side. Or maybe he did telepathically how we work. But she said to me, becoming a mother or birthing something into this world, whether it's birthing a child or a creation or a project or a business or a partnership, whatever, whether you're having your own internal rebirth, like you're having an evolution of self. She's like, the moment that happens, like the conception of that is so full of ecstasy, like it's so orgasmic. This is what she said to me. She's like, it's so full of ecstasy, so full of eros, so orgasmic. They didn't want you to know it. And that's why they called me the Virgin Mary and told everybody it was an immaculate conception. And I was like,
Wow.
what? Like, that is like insane. What?
I have chills.
That was like, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that Mary Magdalene, like, she brings to me all the time. Like she gives me these pieces of information and I'm like, whoa, like it's really huge. Like the like the depth. Oh, I've got like pain in my chest when I say it. Like this is what I
Mm.
mean. Like notice the sensation, because it's scary to say that out loud because they've hidden it. They've hidden this Shakti, they've hidden this life force energy, especially from women. They cut us out of the gospel. They hid our stories. They spread a story around the world that it was all about this man. And they didn't like, they just, well, who brought him into this world? Mary, supposedly. And an immaculate conception. No, the conception she must have had to bring in somebody like Jesus must have been so off the scale orgasmic to bring in an essence and a soul like that onto this planet. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Like they wanted that to be hidden. And she said it to me, and she's like, don't, she's like, becoming a mother, like whether it's you like literally becoming a mother or whether it's you birthing something, don't lose the eros and the life force and the ecstasy behind
Mm.
it. Don't get dragged down into the what you just said, the what ifs and the it doesn't work. And like just go with what lights you up, like go with it, because that is like an unstoppable force within you that
Mm.
no one can take away from you. And they will try. They
Mhm.
will try. So when you mention about the feminine, I think that story kind of sums it up quite well. And that just happened yesterday. Because to me, that was like, wow. Like they literally stripped the energy of the feminine from
Mhm.
the birthing process. And then when I link it back to rebirthing and reclaiming your sovereignty and the breath work that I spoke to you about earlier on in this episode, it's like, yeah, like birth is meant to be ecstatic, but it's become this scary, medicalized thing that's like with loads of intervention and taking away the power and the sovereignty from the mother and therefore the baby. Um, and therefore, we have a lot of really, really screwed up birth scripts that play out in people's
Mhm.
lives. I haven't even shared like some of the ways it plays out in lives, but there's so much to that.
Mhm. I know, I feel like this is something that we could talk about for a long time because I still have so many questions. If could you give an example? I know that you had mentioned when I had listened to your podcast on this, you had mentioned, and I may not say this exactly in the right way, so correct me if I'm wrong. Having some sort of spiritual connection, being able to feel that connection with an unborn sibling and feeling the effects of that. Can you explain what happened with that and how that worked?
Yeah. Yeah. So in my personal birth script, I'll share about my personal birth script. I won't go into the whole thing because that's a whole other episode in itself. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I first started exploring my own birth script when I went to breathwork journeys. When I was on my spiritual awakening journey, I was in a deep state of freeze, trauma response, PT. I had deep PTSD from an abusive relationship, from a really bad car accident where I was cut out of the car. I had like these near death experiences multiple times that like I knew that I had angels or God or someone protecting me because there were so many times that I like was on in situations where I could have and probably would have died. And and I knew I was protected. And when I started explore when I was in this freeze trauma response and I really couldn't move my body, like I was struggling to die. I couldn't connect to my life force energy. I was like dead. I was numb. Like I couldn't, I would shut down. I was selectively mute for about 4 years after my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I really struggled to open up my mouth to speak my desires. Like who you hear today now is not like it's been a journey to get here to be able to vocalize this stuff articulately, confidently out loud because I wasn't there. And so when I discovered breath work, someone recommended it to me. This was about 5 years ago, maybe even longer now, actually. Um, I started going for sessions and we looked kind of briefly at the birth script, but it opened up like a whole thing for me. And I've been like journeying with it ever since. And it's things, it's what I work on with my clients too. And when I started to explore my birth script, I knew that my mum had lost a baby before me. So I was having these breathwork journeys in Israel where I was living at the time when all of like my psychic gifts were coming online, when Mary Magdalene was coming to me, I was like awakening the feminine. It was like a lot. I was like channeling left, right, and center. It was crazy, crazy, very ungrounded because it was all new and my third eye and like everything was just like super wide open. I was fully cracked open. And I started to have conversations with my mum about it because I wanted to know more. So my mum lost a baby before me. She gave birth to him. His name was Daniel. She gave birth to him in Israel, so where I was living at the time, where she'd met my dad years ago. They live in England, but um, yeah. So she'd given birth to this little boy, and he died basically instantly. She almost bled to death. So it was a very traumatic time for her. I was next in the womb about 2 years later, year and a half, 2 years later. So there's always been for me, like through my awakening journey, this feeling of like a connection to this spirit baby, the baby that never got to be part of our family. And I think that is very much the reason why I am the psychedelic sheep and the black sheep of the family. Like I came in next after that. Like I had to do a lot of healing after that in the womb itself, but also like as the cycle breaker in my family. And
Mm-hmm.
um there was a point where I was living, I had to move back home in 2020. I was actually in India doing my breathwork training, and then they shut down the country. I ended up back in the UK after 10 years of living abroad in Asia and then in the Middle East. And I had to move back in with my mum and dad, and it was, I hadn't been lived with them for years. And there was these moments at the dinner table where my dad would talk about me, but like talk over me to my mum, but I was right there sitting next to him, and it was as if I was invisible to him. And I was like, for example, he'd say to my mum, "How was Shani's day?" And I'm like, "Dad, why don't you just ask me? Like, I'm right here, I'm next to you." And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I feel like he doesn't see me. And all my life, I wanted my dad to see me. I had a lot of father wounding. There's a whole other story. But I was like, okay, someone in my family hasn't been seen. So I asked my mum, "Did you?" And the baby came to me, like the spirit of the baby came to me. I said to my mum, "Did you ever get to see the baby or hold the baby?" And she said, "No, they took him away before either of us could see him." And in that moment, like I knew that there was like a cord, like an attachment, that he was stopping me from being seen because he never got to be seen as I was
Mm.
next in the womb. Because my younger brother was fully seen, like fully seen by my dad. So it was just, it was me. So I did a meditation with the baby, and I said to him, like, "I love you, and I'm sorry that you didn't get to come into our family. I'm sorry that you didn't get to be part of this constellation, but like you have to stop whatever you're doing. Like I want to be seen. Like I am here, and I did survive. And I'm sorry that that's like not where you're at, but like I am part of this family, and I deserve to be seen in this space." And when I did it, and I like dissolved that connection, my relationship with my father like completely changed, really. Like it
Wow.
was, I really took some empowered moves to like change the relationship with my dad, and it was like it's been different ever since. That's just one aspect. Like as a result of my mum having to have an emergency cesarean with him, she then had to have a planned cesarean with me and my brother. And for me, like that's not how I would have wanted to be birthed onto this earth. I would love to have been a sovereign birth, like a vaginal birth, just a physiological birth. She couldn't because of the stitches that she'd had before and the
Mm.
potential that she might bleed again. So there was fear there. She had a planned cesarean with me. And for me, that like took away my sovereignty. Like I didn't get to choose when I arrived. And so many people don't get to choose when they arrive. Like babies know when they're ready to birth. So if you're forcing a baby to come early, or you've planned a date when a baby's gonna come when it's not ready to come, like that baby's not ready. And therefore, like the belief imprint is like, wait, but I'm not ready to be birthed. And then
Mm.
it's really difficult to birth anything into this world, like a project or an idea, or I don't know, a book you want to write, or whatever it is. Like there's always that feeling of, well, I'm not ready, but I'm not ready, but I'm not ready. You're pressurizing me because you forced me to come when I wasn't ready. And it plays out
Mhm.
in these patterns of behaviors that you might not even know are there. And there's so much more I could talk about with my birth script, but I have podcast episodes about it. So if people want to go and listen, they can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that like energetic imprint that they've got from that time of being born, which is such an important time in one's life, right? And then carrying that energetic imprint through all the different areas of their life. That's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and it's like when, earlier we spoke about where it lives in the body. So
Hmm.
I'll share just one last story on this because I have so many stories. I could go on forever. But when it was my birthday this year, I realized that I really struggled to celebrate my birthday. I've always struggled to celebrate my birthday. I've always
Mm.
like hidden away from it. Don't really care to like celebrate it with friends. I don't feel very joyful on my birthday. I usually feel a little bit down, a little bit like not I've never seen it as like, oh, yay, another celebration that I've been alive one more year. I see it as like, oh no, I'm getting a year older. And that's beliefs from my dad that's also being passed down. But this year I was like, okay, like let me tap into the joy and the celebration. We're in Mexico, we've got great friends here, great community. Let's have a party. And on my actual birthday, my partner gave me a body work session. He does de-armoring body work, which is also like a trauma release body work where you
Mm.
can connect to things in the body, release it, and replace it with like love and softness and feminine care. And he gave me a body work on my birthday, and I had this huge like feeling coming up into my body that was survivor's guilt of a moment. I'm like,
Mm.
oh my goodness, I didn't even realize I'm in my 30s, and I didn't realize that in my body at a cellular level, because I can feel it and the memories coming up, that I'm carrying survivor's guilt that my brother didn't survive and I did. And that is why
Mm,
I've never been able to celebrate my birthday, because for me, it's like, oh, I can't possibly celebrate my day of birth when his day of birth was his day of death. It's like
mm,
it fully came up for me. And why? Because my body was being activated in the body work, because it lives in the body. It doesn't live in the mind, you know?
mm,
And I had no idea that I was carrying survivor's guilt. I've never really experienced it as like a conscious awareness in my lifetime until this birthday. And I was like, oh, wow. So, like, my day of birth probably was a celebration for my parents, but it was probably also filled with a lot of dread because of the previous birth that my mum had was also a day of death. So it's like, whoa, no wonder I've like always held back from celebrating it. And I didn't even know why. Like, just
mhm.
nothing that I did, you know? But so this is the like depth of the imprint that your birth script can live in your bodies and leave in your body, that you may not even, until you start doing this work, until you start feeling the body, doing breath work, body work, whatever it is, different modalities. For me, it's breath work.
Mhm.
You won't know that it lives there, but you
Yeah.
might see the pattern. Like the pattern was, why can't I celebrate my birthday? I'm like in my late 30s and I've never enjoyed celebrating my birthday ever in my whole life. Why? Oh, that was like a really deep one. I was like, okay. So, like these are just examples of ways that it plays out in your
And
life.
that's wild. Yeah, I know so
Wild.
many people. Yeah, I know so many people who struggle with the same thing. I have a lot of friends who struggle to celebrate their birthday, and I'm sure it's linked to so many different things.
Yeah.
That's,
If they were to go
yeah.
back to their like birth story and their birth script, there's probably a belief or a story there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now I know we don't have too much time. Do you, and feel free to say no, but do you have time for me to ask you one more question?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was curious, you're talking about, of course, we know that through DNA, energetics, we carry our ancestral trauma, like our trauma from our mother, our grandmothers, et cetera, father. Now, when someone has multiple kids, do you, does does each child carry their ancestral trauma? So each child all have to go through breaking the cycles in order to not pass it down generationally? And this may be an out there question. I'm not sure if you have an answer for it, but is it possible for one child to hold on more ancestral trauma? Say they take after more of their DNA from their mom, per se. Say their mom had a particular traumatic childhood versus the dad. Could a particular child hold on to more ancestral trauma than another?
I think very much so. I really think it depends on so many factors. Like I've
Mm,
got I've got friends that have got kids that like they've told me about the two different types of births that they had with their two kids, and you can see the difference in the children. You can see the kids that were born in hospital with cesarean and intervention and epidurals and all the rest of it, or induction. You can see those kids don't trust life. Like me, I've had to
mm,
really work so hard on trusting life and trusting myself and trusting my decisions, and that's what led me into abusive relationships and car accidents and all sorts of things that like perpetuated the belief that I can't trust myself. So yeah, I've seen, like, even within my friends' kids, like the kids that were born in hospital that had the intervention, they don't trust life and they're way more clingy. They're way more they have less self-confidence. They're not as easeful with the space around them, whereas their younger brothers and sisters, who were often then like later on born at home because the mother then like kind of had an awakening around like birthing and what it might mean to birth in a way that feels sovereign and aligned for her, if she can. There's always reasons why women can't do that, and we're not shaming any women for choosing what they choose. But like my mom, I can't. I had to work a lot on like letting go of resentment with my mom for choosing to have a planned cesarean. It's not what
mm,
I wanted, but for her it was like, well, then I have to flip it and be like, yeah, but she made a choice so I could live, like, because I might not have and she might not have. So like there's always these journeys, but I do notice that kids that have been home birthed in water, like sovereign mothers, fathers there present, the right kind of doulas, etc. Like their personalities are so different. They're so much more chilled out,
Mm,
more at ease with themselves in the world, more explorative, more curious, like less clingy. There's just so many patterns that I can see even in like my friends' kids. And I have quite
mhm,
a number of friends who had like one really bad birth to begin with the first child and then changed it with the second birth. So
mm,
that's really interesting. And I do think there are certain souls that come to this earth at this time who are meant to be the cycle breakers in the family. And they're the empaths and the highly sensitive ones. And if you want to call them star seeds, and if you want to call them, you know, ones that maybe don't necessarily feel like they belong to this earth, that they know they came from another dimension, another place, that they're multidimensional beings, and that like earth feels a little bit like, what is this place? And okay, they sent me down here so I can do this work. And now I have to understand the humanness of people here so that I can feel their pain, so that I can help them with their pain. And I often feel like a lot of the cycle breakers, that's what it is. Like you feel other people's pain because you came here to help them and to break these cycles. But in order to do that, you have to understand the humanness of it all. And being a
mm,
human is not your natural like essence. So it's difficult to then participate in this world in that way. And there are certain souls that come here. I think I'm definitely one of them. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this work. Like, no one in my family knows what I'm talking about when I share this. I don't even talk to them about it.
yeah.
Like, what? What are you on about? Like, no one gets it. So, like, I'm definitely the renegade, the one that looks for sovereignty, the one that explores, the one that my brother a little bit too, but yeah, me first and foremost. And I do think it's because I was next in the womb after my brother died. Like I think
Mhm,
there's a real imprint that I took that on. So yes, it can be. Yes, it's everyone's responsibility to break generational patterns. It's everyone's responsibility to say no and to choose a new story, but not everybody will, and not everybody can, and not everybody yeah, will choose that path. And it's okay, because we're not all meant to. And
mhm.
those of you that are listening to this, and if you're like listening and you resonate because you think, yeah, I am the cycle breaker, like I am the sensitive one, I am the one that feels it all, I am the one that's different to my family. Like, know that you came here with a very important mission, with a very important role. It's a lot of
Yes.
responsibility, and it can feel a lot of the time. Like, it can feel very responsible. But when you break your ancestral chains, you're not just doing this for yourself. As I said at the beginning, you're doing this for your lineage, you're doing this for your legacy. You are literally having ripple effects, and you're giving permission slips to other people to do the same. And just one little spark, one little spark can create a fire in somebody else, and that is their life force
Mm,
energy. So never underestimate the work that you're doing, and don't just think this is for you. Like, I
mhm.
know that, I was a teacher for many years. Like, I know even in my teaching role, I was making impact on kids by what I was sharing with them, and the way I was talking to them and the way I was listening to them was so different to other teachers. Like, don't underestimate the impact that you have. You just don't know. Like, this work, like your mission is so important. So don't give up. Like, keep reclaiming your sovereignty, keep breaking cycles. And yeah, if you want to explore more about the birth script, I just held a 3-day journey, a free 3-day journey. The first 2 days were free. The third day was a paid breathwork journey, which wasn't recorded. But the first 2 days are free. So if anybody wants to access the replays for that, they can drop me a message on Instagram, or they can find me on my website, or yeah, they can connect, and I can send them the links for the replays for those. And if you want to go even further into this, and you're like, yeah, I actually really feel like I've probably got a lot of ancestral patterns that I want to move through. I notice where I'm self-sabotaging. I notice that I'm playing, like, I have a recurring pattern with men, or I have a recurring pattern in my
Mm,
career, or I really struggle to express my needs, my desires, to use my voice. I struggle um to be empowered in certain situations. I've got a beautiful 4-month journey coming up called Rebirth. And this is like an evolution of yourself. This is like really the place where you get to go. We start with the ancestors. We're going to start with the connection to the ancestors, a ceremony, a journey to the ancestors. We're going to go through your birth script, like your origin story. And then we're going to come into the end of like creating your own legacy story, like rewriting a story
mm,
for your legacy. Like, this is a beautiful 4-month journey. So if you want to dive deeper into that as well, we're starting on September the 9th. It's a 4 month container, very intimate. You'll have Telegram support in between. And yeah, it's going to be super beautiful. Um, so there's lots of ways to like dive deeper, and I've got podcast episodes and YouTube videos and all of this stuff. So if you're just like curious and it's piqued your curiosity and you want to know more, you can find me in all those places. All the places.
Amazing. That sounds powerful. And
Yeah.
everything that was just beautifully said. What you were talking about with the empaths, and that was just beautifully said. I will, before we hop off, something I ask every guest on the show is if you were to share one sentence of how you believe that we can come together and make the world a better place, what would it be?
Claim your sovereignty. Just reclaim
Mm,
your sovereignty, liberate yourself, because when you liberate yourself, you are literally, as I said, you're doing this for everyone around you. And when you do that, you're creating the most like beautiful new frequency on this earth that brings
mhm.
community together. And it is making the world a better place. Like just your presence and the way that you move through life when you break these chains is making an impact. It's already making the world a better place, like your
I
presence.
have chills.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's it. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much. It
You're
was
so
such a It's such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for sharing your unique gifts and magic that you have and that you're bringing into this world. I will let the audience know as well. I'll share her socials and any contact information, any links below, so you can look at that, type it in if you need to look at however anything is spelled. And thank you for coming on and
yeah, thank
sharing your magic.
yeah, thank you so much. I'm here for the cycle breakers. Come and continue
Yeah.
breaking these cycles with me. We're doing a great thing for the earth as it is. Yeah.
Hell yes. All right. Thank you for listening. Let me go ahead and